Welcome to the Greg Bennett Show. I'm your host, Greg Bennett, and today I have a very entertaining and insightful conversation with Norwegian Head Coach and Sports Director Arild Tveiten. In this episode, Arild describes how he became the head coach of Norway and how he's developed his coaching over the past 10 years. And he discusses altitude training, heat adaptation, and tapering for major events. And he describes the incredible team culture that he's been cultivating under his guidance for all these years and how his athletes want the very best for each other. And he discusses the level of detail they go into to preparing for these major competitions. It's just simply a fascinating and educational conversation. Now, just a quick little bit of housekeeping before we go on. Thank you for listening. Now, if you're willing, I'd love you to share the show on your social platforms. You'd really be doing me a huge favor there. Please also consider supporting the show's sponsors, Athletic Greens, Hyperice, and Form Swim Goggles. I really couldn't do this show without them. So you're really helping me out by doing that. And finally, please keep the feedback coming. This show is for you. So just let me know what you think, and I'll do what I can to make it a better show for you. I hope you enjoy Arild as much as I did. And remember, success comes to those who enjoy just one moment longer. I want to give a huge shout out to Athletic Greens for supporting the show and for just being there every day for me. Athletic Greens is now very much a part of my daily routine. Just such a simple way to get a delicious blend of 75 superfoods, vitamins and minerals and probiotics and so much more. I really encourage you to invest in yourself. Invest in your own health for your performance optimization today and for your longevity. Sign up and have it delivered straight to your door. It's just so simple, tastes great, and does what I really need for my health. I've also been doubling down on Athletic Greens vitamin D. Just a huge proportion of the population are vitamin D deficient, myself included. And I focus heavily on getting out in the sun throughout the day, but when I can't, I religiously supplement with vitamin D. And right now, if you order, they'll give you a year's supply of vitamin D plus 5 free travel packs. Athletic Greens is just so much more than a multivitamin and multimineral. It takes to the next level, adding in a daily dose of superfoods, probiotics, greens blends, and so much more to support your gut health, your energy, your immunity, and stress. So please do yourself a favor and sign up. It also makes a great gift for a family member or a friend. So sign up now and get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. Now, you've probably heard me on many of the episodes discussing Hyperice products with my guests, whether it's sitting in the Normatec compression boots, which I've been doing after solid workouts for, 10 plus years, or it's the Hypervolt percussion massage devices that I use daily to warm me up before going to the gym, or the vibrating massage roller, which I use before every run. All of the Hyperice gear is just so easy to use and just keeps me going. My goal is to keep moving, keep physically fit for many, many years to come. And using the Hyperice products are just helping me do just that. So simple, quick and easy to look after my body at home. And I've just started using the new Hypervolt Go. It's surprisingly powerful and whisper quiet and ultra lightweight at only 1.5 pounds or 680 grams. And it's 30% smaller than the Hypervolt. The Go is ready to provide relief wherever you roam. With 3 speed settings, 2 interchangeable headset attachments, 18-volt rechargeable lithium-ion battery, and like I said, lightweight, easy to use, 1.5 pounds, 680 grams, and it's TSA approved for carry-on. So get 10% off at all Hyperice products using code GREG10 at checkout. Go to hyperice.com. That's HYPERICE.com and use code GREG10 at checkout. Are you someone who uses bike computers while you ride and or wearable devices while you run? Would you like to have it while you swim? For years, I've been using bike computers and wearables on the run to gain feedback to help efficiency and performance. And now I can have it while I swim with the Form Smart Swim Goggles. Honestly, these goggles blew my mind. I put the Form Smart Swim Goggles on and immediately could see the metrics on the screen. I love playing with my stroke rate and seeing how it affects my pace, just as I did on the bike for most of my career, always trying to find the best cadence to generate power and create the most speed. With Form Smart Swim Goggles, you can see all the metrics while you're swimming: distance, pace, stroke rate, and heart rate. They have it all. The swim data is displayed on the goggle lens, and you can customize the display to see the metrics you want to see. The goggles track it all and are automated. You start them at the beginning of your swim and you don't have to press any buttons in between. They automatically track everything. The goggles connect to the FormSwim app on your smartphone, and there you can review all the details of your swims and see what other swimmers are up to in the Form community as well. Battery life is incredible. 1 hour charge gives you 16 hours of swim time. So go to formswim.com/Greg. That's formswim.com/Greg and get $15 off, or you can use code Greg15 at checkout. All right, today's guest is one of the most successful endurance coaches on the planet. He's the Triathlon Norway Head Coach and the sports director of the Norwegian Triathlon Federation. I've had several of his athletes on the show, including in episode 14 with Kristian Blummenfelt, the 2019 World Triathlon Series Grand Final champion, and in episode 52 with Gustav Iden, the 2019 70.3 World Champion, and then he backed it up in 2020 with the Challenge Daytona PTO Championship. Both guys sang his praises and praised the incredible team culture that he's created. And the clean sweep at the Bermuda World Triathlon Series race in 2018 by the Norwegian men with Casper Stornes, Kristian Blummenfelt, and Gustav Iden really has positioned Norway as a strong force and very much on the radar in the world of triathlon. And I've been just so eager to get him on the show to get a bit of a sense of the why, the how, and the what of his training culture and how he's able to identify talent and then build that talent to the top of the world and perform when it matters. So welcome and thank you for joining me on the Greg Bennett Show, Arild Tveiten. How are you, mate?
Hi, Greg. Thank you. I'm doing great, and it's an honor for me to be on the show with you. And the introduction is just too much for me because I'm one of the guy who's been involved in the sport for many years, and you are one of the athletes I really looked up to when I was young. We are around the same age, but when I tried to make a sport of triathlon myself, so it's an honor to be with you, and looking forward to the chat today.
Well, thank you, mate. But I think the honor's all mine. I really appreciate that. Where are you calling me from at the moment? Where are you in the world?
I'm actually right now in Oslo, Norway. I should be at the training camp with the athletes, but I'm home a little while. But my athletes are down in altitude in southern Spain, in Sierra Nevada.
Oh, okay. Have you been able to get to a few training camps, even with sort of all the lockdowns and everything at the moment? Have you been able to get away for a few camps?
Yes, I've been away a few camps. The athletes has more or less been in Portugal and now in Spain the last 2.5 months. Kristian has been in France actually a few weeks. And have been with them in total around 4 weeks. But the challenge, I have a family, I have 2 small kids. I try to be at home a little bit while, and when you go home, you have the quarantine, the travel restrictions. It's quite difficult. And I just have to mention, last time I was in Portugal for 2 weeks. Before I traveled down, I need to take a PCR test to see that I have no COVID-19. And then you come down, you take a new test, and then you stay in quarantine at this training center we were. And then you have the training camp. When you're going back home again, the day before you went home, a new test. You're going to the airport just before the flight, a new test, and then you're flying to Copenhagen, and have a new test. It ended up that they're having 8 tests within that period just to be allowed to go on training camp.
Oh my goodness, 8 tests in a matter of just a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
Within 2 weeks, and then you need to get back home, and then you are in self-quarantine. I can be with my family, but I should not go to do some else. Okay, I can go out for my training alone. It's no problem. But the restrictions in Norway and also in many other countries in Europe and probably also in the US could be some challenging, especially want to do some traveling and prepare for racing and training.
Well, I've seen that with some of the athletes just trying to even travel over to the Challenge Miami race that just happened this last sort of month, and just trying to move around the world right now is just so difficult. You mentioned kids. How old are your kids?
I have twin daughters. They are 9 years old, so they are growing up, and I actually I am divorced now, but my ex-wife, we got the kids when I actually started in the job, so I probably make some very strange judgment because I quit my normal day full-time job at the time when my ex-wife got the kids, and started in the role as a sport director and head coach for the national team back in 2011. So.
So that's been fairly consuming, I imagine, once you sort of started. I mean, that's the thing. Most of these federations, they have a head triathlon coach, and then they have a separate sort of sports director. But with you in Norway, you're wearing many hats. How are you able to sort of, I mean, that's a lot to take on. You're able to sort of compartmentalize and put enough energy into both?
It is challenging in many ways, but I like to say that it's very easy to agree with me because I make the decision, and so that's the positive side. But the serious part of it, when I started the job, I was actually asked to be the sport director. And I could just do what normal sport director did, but I actually saw that the main trouble we had with the athletes, that they have no coach, and we have no culture for high performance sports. Oh, we have culture for high performance sports, but not in triathlon in Norway. So I saw that if I didn't take that role too, we were not able to develop the athletes. So I actually gave myself that role. I didn't have to, but right now I'm more comfortable being the coach with the athlete. But as a part of the sport director, you also organize the whole program, and now we're working a lot with the development of the younger athletes. We bring in other coaches to support them and also to support the top athletes. So it's a lifestyle. You spend your whole days and every day working. Hopefully, I will do most of the time working as a coach, but I see more and more doing administrative things. But you do what you love most in the world, so it's not bad.
It's truly incredible that you started off thinking you're going to be a sports director, thought, well, somebody better coach these guys.
Yeah,
you didn't just step in. It's really quite remarkable what you've done in this 10-year window. I mean, if I just look at the world ranking of, the guys that I mentioned in the introduction, Gustav Iden right now is ranked number 7th on the ITU world rankings. Kristian Blummenfelt 11th, Casper Stornes 18th. The women are coming with is it Lotte Miller? How do I say
Lotte Miller, yes.
Lotte Miller's coming. She's ranked 66, but she did finish 23rd in the World Series in 2019. So she's on her way.
Yeah.
So that, for me, from a country where, I've been in the sport 35 years, and Norwegians were never the ones that were like, okay, here come the Norwegians. I mean, you've developed it from almost scratch. I mean, I'm fascinated. Well, I'm fascinated by so many things, but I mean, let's start with, how do you identify the talent? How did that all start?
That is, in one way, it's a tricky question, but on the other hand, it's quite easy because I actually took the athletes we had. So it was actually no kind of talent identification at all. I have to tell you, the first time I meet the athletes, the federation was so small, we had no resources, and I was asked to join the youth team, what was supposed to be the youth team on a weekend camp. And they invited all young athletes between 14 and 16 in Norway who was doing triathlon or planned to do triathlon. And it ended up coming up with 20 athletes. That was all in Norway. It was not a part of Norway. It was all young athletes in Norway doing that sport. Out of this, we have 4 on the national team today. and 3 of them have been winning big races. And it is Kristian Blummenfelt. He was there the first day. Lotte Miller, Gustav Iden, Casper Stornes. He actually came in the year later. They were not especially good at all, but that was the one we had. So out of this, we should try to pick a kind of a national team, but most of them were not so interested in sport because they were on the training camp because they have a free weekend of training. So, but out of them, we picked a team of 14 athletes, and I would say that most of them was not very good, but we had the few of them. And it was not like you need to have a talent identification. You need to work with the athletes you had at that time. And in many ways, you can say that maybe I was lucky that Kristian and Gustav was part of that. But I would also say that in triathlon, I don't think it's so much about talent identification. It's more to find the right person, the right personality, and try to find and do good coaching and work with them in a proper way. And I think you can make big stars of almost everyone if you just learn them to know them as a person. You get to know them, and you do the good thing about what you should do as a coach with them. And out of that, I think you can create diamonds out of stones. So for us, it's not so much about talent identification or talent at all. It's about the driving force you have as an athlete to do the work you want to do. And when I started, it's also quite funny because when I started, I was on that camp before I started in the position. And I have to say that I was actually not so interested in working with young athletes. At that time, I had my normal job. I have a good life. I was doing some training myself. I was doing some age group Ironman racing, and I was quite happy with that. I have been started coaching some age group Ironman athletes, and it's not to be rude or anything, but that is quite easy, and it's quite well paid. And it's also okay. I don't need to do anything more. Why should I start working with young athletes that I barely don't know who's going to go for the Olympics? So they asked me many times, Emmy, can you come and meet the athletes? Can you come and see them? And when I met them the first time, that is actually 11 years ago. I said, okay, maybe I saw there's a lot of nice guys, right personalities, and they want to work hard, but most of them I have to say, was really crap. I was beating them in all disciplines. At that time, I was 40 years old, and as the typical age group who think you are better than you are, but I was actually better than them at that time.
I love that. I mean, you've touched on so much in that, and what I really like about that is the way I think when we discuss what is talent, and what is talent identification, because the physical side of things, like you said, with the right coaching, with the right consistent training over long periods of time of sort of doing the right work, well, that's only a part of talent identification. I think what you've got is some athletes that all have a tremendous desire to be the very best in the world. And somehow, and we can go deeper into this, somehow with some great coaching, you're able to keep them all working together. And it's this team culture that I'm fascinated with, how you keep these guys that are all trying to be the very, very best in the world prepared to continually work with each other. So let's touch right on that, because, I mean, when you've got pretty strong personalities, and some pretty big egos, because you need those if you're going to be great, how are you finding you managing, especially these 3 guys that we've been talking about?
Of course, that's a very complex answer. But I think in many ways I was quite lucky, because when I started working with them, they were very young. So it's quite easy to try to twitch them and to turn them into the direction you want to. That is one part of it. And also something I said kind of as a joke, it's quite serious too, because the only coach they have in triathlon in the whole life is me. They don't know anything else. And that could be good, it could be bad. So, yeah. So when I started out, I could more or less dictate what I should do. That was in the beginning. And I have to say that before I officially started position, I was asked to work with one athlete. They said, please, if you don't have the position, can you at least start working with one athlete? And that was Kristian. And so I've been working with him since he was 16 years old. And now he's 27. So it's been quite a long time. And he had really big motivation to do what is needed to do. And I was at that time, I don't have really big experience of coaching young athletes. So in one way you can say I was lucky, because we were pushing it quite hard, but he tolerated and he enjoyed it. But then we find a way to work together, and I see his driving force, his motivation, and he was the leading star in the team. And then we put in, when I started officially in the job, then we suddenly also have Gustav. We have, of course, Casper, but we also have some other athletes, some good swimmers who's been a part of the scene for a few years. We put them in together with Kristian, and he has always been the leading star, and he was always the one who's pushing. And I try to follow up on that. And out of that, we started to create an environment that we're working to be the best in the world. I was very clear when we started that we don't set any limits for ourselves. We just try to establish a culture, an environment, a team culture that we work together to try to be best athletes in the world. And it's happening over time. But at that time, I will just, if I'm allowed to, I can give you a short brief of my triathlon career.
Please.
Yes, I will, because it's not I want to brag about myself, because I was not good. But I learned, I was like the boy who's standing on the other side of the fence and see you big guys racing at the high level. I'm the one who wanted to be with you. I wanted to go to the Olympics, but I was never good enough. At that time, I was kind of, okay, it was all the other world. You were from Australia, you had nice weather, warm temperature. We were in cold Norway. We didn't have the money. You make a lot of excuses why we were not succeeding. And we were like, this is too difficult for us in Norway. No one wants to sponsor us. There's no money in it. And then we started to be quite happy to be the best in Norway, because it's always someone who's best in Norway. And internationally, we were really, really bad. But we were just making a lot of excuses for ourselves why we didn't succeed. So when I was asked to take in this position, I said, there's two things I learned from what I did as an athlete. First, you should never set any limits for yourself. Because we thought that it's impossible for us to be the best in the world, because we were from Norway, and Norway is a cold country, and a lot of excuses. So don't set any limit for yourself. You can always achieve what you want to do. And it was also something that up in north, in Norway, we were quite happy to be the best in Norway, because it was a little triathlon community who looked up to the best athletes, of course. But then you set too much limit on yourself, and you should never be satisfied. So another thing I learned, never be too satisfied with what you have achieved. You can always do better. So when I started with these athletes, I started from day one to say that, okay, we are in this together. We are working to try. We should be the best athletes in the world. We should win the gold in Olympics and whatever. Okay, we haven't achieved so much yet, but I should not be the one who set limit to the athletes of what they could achieve and what is good enough. So for us, that is always be the leading star. We should always aim for the best to the top, no matter what we started out with. And in the beginning, we were not good at all. But everyone had the motivation to try to go a little bit harder, a little bit further, a little bit longer, to try to achieve to be the best.
Yeah, you know what I love about that is your experience in your own career of loving the sport of triathlon and kind of standing on the sidelines and watching others kind of go about their business. But the learning lessons you have from that and going, hang on, we put limits on ourselves and that's not what we're going to do. And so what you're doing probably every day over the last 10, 11 years working with these young athletes is you're just freeing them from any constraints, from any excuses, and just allowing them to go race and be completely free and take on the world and realize that there is nobody that special out there. It's just the people that have done the work and the people that haven't, and I think that's extraordinary. And that's what you've done in such a short amount of time. Like, there's very few coaches in the world that have the resume that you guys have created in Norway. I mean, it really is a phenomenal, when we look at this past decade, to go, wow. And I agree, it's taken a bit of work, but it's a snowball effect, right? You kind of got to keep building it and building it. On that, when we talk about your coaching, I mean, who are some of your biggest influences for your kind of coaching style? And have you got education in coaching, or have you just been sort of researching as you've gone?
Oh, it is both. And I have to say, as an athlete, I really look up to what Mark Allen did in his early days. It's not that I'm doing what he did, but he was one of the first who was starting to have focus on intensity control. He was using the heart rate monitors in the mid-80s.
Yeah, with Phil Maffetone, I think.
Phil Maffetone. We can have a long discussion that I don't think that's the right path to go. But the thing is, intensity control, that you need to balance between easy training, hard training, and using tools to do that in the best possible way. And in the early days, it was, of course, heart rate monitor. So I learned a little bit from what he did and the perspective of it, but mostly, actually, and that is maybe also a little bit controversial, because when I started, I said, okay, in Norway, we are nothing in triathlon. If I try to do what they do all around the world, the best thing I can hope for is to copy them. Mm-hmm. And if you copy what you do in US, in Australia, you'll never be as good as the best one. The copy is always one step behind. So I was like, okay, I need to create something myself. And it's not like I took it out of nowhere, but Norway at that time, and still have a quite long traditions for huge success, and also a lot of scientific research in endurance sport. Mm-hmm. At that time, we have maybe the two best marathon runners in the world, females. Ingrid Kristiansen, she ran 2:21 marathon in 1985. We have, of course, the cross-country skiing team. Okay, cross-country is a very little sport in the rest of the world, but in Norway it's big. But I know something about endurance training. And at that time, the Norwegians were really good in rowing. And that was building up to be one of the best rowing teams in the world. And so I started looking to what did they do? What kind of training did I do? What training philosophy? And how can I adapt that to triathlon? And I got a little bit of experience. So I actually in many ways created what I thought was the best way to develop athletes. But I have to say, when I started, I was not sure that it was the correct way to do. Because I haven't done so much. Okay, I've been coaching age group athletes, but I have never working with young athletes. And I remember the first 2, 3, 4 years, I was thinking, oh, this is going too well. I come to kill all the athletes. This will stop now. When will the success stop? When will it start going backward? When will all the injury, bad things happen? But slowly over the years, you actually believe what we do is probably quite sustainable way of develop athletes. So of course, over the time, you get more and more secure about what we do is quite a way to work with athletes. But on the other hand, it's also like the more you learn, the more experience you got, the more you understand that you need to learn more. So we are always develop how we work with athletes, the coaching philosophy, use of technology and everything. So it's the day you say that I'm on the top, I know everything, then you're gone. It's always try to move forward, to learn something. And the way I coach the best athletes today is very different from what I did with Kristian 11 years ago. And that has to be that way.
I like so much about what you've just said then, especially like the don't just copy paste what everybody else is doing, and then outsourcing and going to other avenues to try and figure out how to become a great triathlon coach and create a great program, and then never settling with what you've come up with. It was interesting. I just had Jan Frodeno on the show, and we were discussing, basically he's always got a target on his back, and it's almost like having that target on his back is the fueling to the anxiety to just keep wanting more and more out of yourself. And I see you in that same kind of position, that you've got all these champion athletes on the rise, and they're all very much a part of the conversations now of whether we're talking definitely, the Olympics, whether we're talking 70.3 world champs, or Kristian Blummenfelt talking about, breaking 7 for the Ironman, for 7 hours so you've got all of these things on your table. And so it's just kind of, the world is watching. And so we got to keep adapting. We got to keep improving. And I think that's fantastic, though. I think that's where you keep learning and you keep growing. I really do want to spend time with you dissecting maybe a little bit more about the specifics of the training, if that's okay with you.
Yes, of course. You are always welcome.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it, because I've always enjoyed trying to figure out how to improve endurance, how to improve strength, speed, everything we can without breaking down. And it's always a fine line, between breakdown. But if let's start with how you were able to prepare 3 guys to go 1, 2, 3 at the Bermuda World Triathlon Series race back in 2018, which since they've changed the name to World Triathlon Series, has never been done by a country of men before. The women have done it. I think I believe the American women, maybe the Brits and maybe the Australians, but I'm not sure my history there. I'm sorry, but definitely for the first lot of men to go on that podium. What was it that you were able to do to specifically get them ready for that race? They seem to be the strongest guys on the bike. But you tell me, what are you guys doing to prepare for a big race like that in 2018?
Well, that day, everything turns out the way that we wanted it to be. So I would not say we were lucky, but that was a perfect storm that everything comes together. And it doesn't happen so often. But the thing is that up to that point, the winner, Casper Stornes, he was not so not known. So most of the athletes and people didn't know so much about him. But we as a team knew that he was a strong athlete, but he has been a little bad luck in his racing earlier. So we knew he was strong. But the thing is, leading up to that race, we spent 4 weeks at altitude. One of the things that we try to do at least 3 to 4 months a year is to train at altitude. To train at altitude, especially at the altitude we did at that time, and we also do every spring, Sierra Nevada. That is located at 2,300 meters. That's quite high. So I don't know what this in feet, but the altitude is demanding.
Probably about 8,000 feet, I think. Yeah, very high. Yeah, 7,500, 8,000 feet. Yeah. A quick mini break. I really want to encourage you to do something special for yourself and sign up to Athletic Greens and get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by visiting athleticgreens.com/Greg. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Greg. I'm loving the new Hypervolt Go percussion massage device from Hyperice. It's powerful, quiet, lightweight, and TSA approved so I can use it while I travel. Check out the Hypervolt Go and all the other incredible Hyperice gear at hyperice.com and use code GREG10 for a 10% discount. That's hyperice.com. If you want to see all your key metrics like pace, distance, stroke rate, and heart rate while you swim, you need the Form Smart Swim Goggles. Go to formswim.com/Greg. That's formswim.com/Greg and get $15 off. Or you can use code GREG15 at checkout.
And the thing is, and that also correlate very well to our training philosophy, because at that level, so high in altitude, is you should be very careful about doing too much anaerobic work. If you do that, you will probably it will be too much. So it's building a big aerobic base. So most of the intervals we did was built around lactate threshold and everything like that. So it's quite basic, high volume. But it's two things that is special with the Sierra Nevada. You live at the center at 2,300 meters, which means that every time you are out on the bike, you have at least 90 minutes of continuous uphill cycling. So it's very difficult to travel out of Sierra Nevada and not be in better bike shape than before the camp started. It's almost impossible, because it's fantastic to cycle there. And I know you had the head coach from Jan Frodeno, Dan Laurent, at your show, and he's there with his cycling team, Bora Hansgrohe, several times a year. So we know that when we are there in March, April, it's the place where all the big overall contender for the Giro d'Italia are training and preparation for the Giro d'Italia. So a lot of really good cyclists there. So it's a very good place for training, especially cycling. But when it comes down to the race, what we did in Sierra Nevada was just mostly basic training with high volume, a lot of intervals at the threshold. But then we did something extra on the bike, because we took a look at the course. Bermuda race, that was the first time that was on the race calendar. So we actually didn't know the course, but we knew it would be a quite short, steep hill there, the corkscrew hill. So we were discussing the tactic, and the normal tactics is that, okay, we need to attack on the hill, because that's what everyone expect everyone to do. But in the nature of most triathletes, they go all out uphill, and then they spend the rest of the loop to recover until they come to the hill next time. So it's very difficult to get rid of some of the cyclists there. So what's actually happened that Casper, he was quite early in the race, he was leading. So he was quite at the front when he come to the top, and then he did what we had planned to do, just keep pushing over the top when he going slowly downhill. And then it was a time where the rest of the field need to relax to recover from going so hard uphill. For us, we knew what we could do, because in training we had created the same hill with the same incline, so we knew how hard it would be. and we will calculate how many the power output we should do going up that hill, and how we should push at the threshold intensity after the hill. So we were actually training specific on that to work anaerobic for 45 seconds and then work hard on the threshold until you go to the next loop and go up again. So that was what we actually been preparing for. So Casper was actually doing that. He didn't plan to attack or anything. He just did what we had planned to do, all of the team. And when he got the lead, of course, he just followed his own pace. And then Kristian and Gustav, in many ways, they could not do so much because they didn't want to be the guy who wanted to go after him. But what they did actually is when they knew that his leads were so big that it was no way that the likes of Mario Mola or some of them could run him down, they said, okay, we go after him. But if we go after him, we need to attack in a way that no one else is following us. And at that time, I think that he had 2.5 minutes of the main group. And all the boys knew that Casper and them were in a running shape that is no way that the big guys running more Marimola could catch him. So they went after him, and they were able to they didn't caught him, but they were within 1 minute 15 after him. But still, the main pack was 2 minutes 30 seconds behind. And then it was just, you could control your own race. And so it's in many ways a perfect day. And it's a lot of memories from that. And one of the things is because you saw during the race that, wow, it could actually happen that we can have a podium sweep. But the first time I really understand it, and that was, I think, quite funny. Chris Gamble, who's working for the World Triathlon, he's come over to me. Arild, yes, I have a serious question for you. Okay, we are in the middle of the race. What do you want to ask me about? Do you have an extra Norwegian flag? So the thing is, he knew that they just have 2 Norwegian flags.
Oh no!
So when the boys were on the last lap on the bike, he actually approached me and asked me for an extra flag.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious! Did you have it?
Actually, the mother of Kristian was there, so she had the flag. So I was able to get the flag, and that was also the flag I was gave to Casper when he's running over the finish line. But he was so exhausted that he just threw the flag away. So so we need to spend some time to find it. But in the end, we actually had all 3 flags.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But the fun part of it, of course, he asked me at the last lap on the bike, you have the flag. And then I said, wow, this could actually happen. And
he asked on the bike, excuse me, while he still had a lap of the bike? That's great.
Yeah, they had 1 lap on the bike.
Oh, wow. So he still had 10K to go in the run, but he was that confident. I love that.
Yeah, he was. And it was a good memory. And I also remember the mother of Casper called me when he had 1 lap to go on the run. And she was so nervous. She was crying, oh, he will break down. He cannot finish it. I said, relax, he will win, no problem. Sit down, relax. And she was back in Norway and watching the race. So it was good. And it was that was probably the first time most of the world in triathlon knew about the Norwegian, of course. Well, especially Kristian had some really good results before, but that was when it maybe changed a little bit, that we get a lot of attention. Yeah.
It 100% did. And just huge congratulations. I can just, listening to you tell that story, it's I think it's left a mark on you for the rest of your life. I think it must have been just a truly, truly special moment to have that clean sweep. The way and the maturity of Gustav Iden and Kristian Blummenfelt, probably the two more senior athletes out of the three, being prepared to wait and wait and wait on that bike until they knew their teammate had enough. That almost gives me goosebumps, because there's very few people that I know. For most other federations, it's quite often, I know my own federation, if I attack, I was always getting hunted down by the other Aussies. It was never, Greg's up the road, let's hope an Aussie wins. I just think that's a very, very special. And I'm fascinated by the altitude work. For us living in Boulder, Colorado, and we both, Laura, my wife, and I experimented a lot with the different kinds of training. We always felt we obviously got a lot out of the altitude training, but we were always very careful. We responded well to altitude training if we went there already somewhat fit. If we went up unfit, it really took a process to just get to a basic fitness level before you could sort of optimize the altitude. Do you guys approach it very cautiously like that? Are you going in fit? Are you kind of have an idea of where you want to be before you go up there?
Yes, we do. The first year we did altitude, we didn't know so much about it. But we knew that we need to rest well and be fit, but also well rested. And then we always, of course, started out the training. First training block was very easy. But that is something we have developed a little bit more during the years, because for now we know what we can do of training at altitude. And we also we know what we have out of it. So it's sometimes we need to do some special preparation and special training before going into altitude, because it's some of the things that we cannot train so much at altitude. So we need to do that before. And that the scientific part on how we prepare to going into altitude has improved a lot during the years. But in many ways, of course, to go into altitude with a tired body, in no way you can recover.
No. What Laura and I found, and just a quick story on us, because this show is about you, but we would find we would go back up to altitude, and a bit like you said, really focusing on the endurance side of things, aerobic and the lactic threshold, and never going above it. But for us, that first couple of weeks back up there was very gentle. But what we would often do is plan a 10K hard running race back down at sea level, sort of 2 weeks in. And then we'd come back from that running race, and we found the adaptation almost accelerated by going down to sea level to get that very hard, intense running race at sea level. Are you guys experimenting with things like that, or is it just focusing on the lab results? Or
it depends. Especially when we're going to this first camp of the year, we are most based off the scientific data we have before we're going into the camp. But we also normally use, for instance, Font-Romeu in the French Pyrenees during most of the summer. I think that is it's not so high. It's 1,800 meters. So you can do a little bit different training. But during the summer last year, and also the year before, we had that also almost a home base during the whole season. So then we are there and going to do the races and coming back up again. And at that time, we do some race-specific training or racing when we are at altitude. And that is something that works out really well. We also done it in the camp we have in September, October in Sierra Nevada. We have used it, for instance, one year when Kristian and the boys was preparing for the first 70.3 race they did. They have a little bit break between the camp and going to Jersey, to Malta to do the Super League races, and that was that is of course fast and in a very high intensity. So they were doing that, going back up to altitude and prepare for the 70.3 race in Bahrain. That was in 2018. So where Kristian won in front of Gustav and Casper on third place. So Yeah, so we do a lot of that too, especially during the season.
I like how you're measuring the combining the speed, if you can find it down at sea level, going back up to the altitude, building the engine, the heart and lungs, and the strengthening the endurance. I think it's a really great balance to have, because you're not winning even a 70.3 these days unless you've got enough speed, unless you've got that power. So you need to be able to do both. And I also like the way that you're experimenting with the different altitude bases. The 6,000 feet or 1,800 meters at Font-Romeu, and we trained there a bit, and that's very much similar to Boulder, Colorado, or Colorado Springs, similar kind of altitude gain. Actually, do you know a marathoner by the name of Frank Shorter from the 1970s? He won the 1972 marathon. He was part of the whole running boom. Anyway, Frank Shorter is actually our neighbor in Boulder. He's 2 doors down from us, and I remember having a conversation with Frank, and he was telling me, look, Greg, we look at altitude like this. He said, we look at it in increments. If you consider 5,000 feet as one increment, then 6,000 feet, one increment, then 6,000 feet as 2 increments. So 6,000 feet being the 1,800 meters that you just said with Font-Romeu. And then every 1,000 feet is an increment above that. And so when you are training at Boulder, which tends to be more that 5,000 to 6,000 feet, you can get away with this, and this. And he would outline it. And then he said, look, we would go up to Vail or up into the mountains more, where it was more the 8,000 to 9,000 feet, a bit like what you're saying with Sierra Nevada. And it's kind of like combining the two and understanding the stresses on the body. Have you been able to do a lot of testing in both locations to see the effects of the kind of training that you're getting from that altitude?
Yes, we have done some tests on that, and we have, of course, the performance tests, but we also do some tests to see the anaerobic threshold power, pace, and everything, and do some small race simulation. We also done some of the most interesting thing. We took a look at the blood data to see how the red cells and the blood hemoglobin is increasing during different altitude, and try to find the optimized way to how long you should be at altitude and at which level. That is some of the research we are doing more and more out of now. Wow. And we also try to mix up a little bit about heat training sometimes at altitude. And that is an extra factor. So it's not that you need to go higher, but you put in some extra stress factor, because, and then I have to say, if you are sitting in a heat chamber in Sierra Nevada with the temperature of 35 degrees, the same as you were racing in Tokyo, the stress on the body is quite demanding.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, all of this thing, we call it heat or altitude or whatever. All of it, if we just put it in one bag, is called stress. And the reason we want to stress ourselves is to become stronger, to overcome the stress and become stronger. What we've got to be careful at doing is adding too much stress at once. It's kind of layering it and layering it and layering it to allow yourself to get stronger and stronger and stronger. But if you approach it with too much too soon, it can really do some damage. I'll be fascinated when you guys all retire. There is going to be a lot of people that are going to want to see this data that you guys have collected over this whole period, because like you working with the Norwegian cross-country ski team, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there going, the data, because I know after talking to Kristian and Gustav on the show, like I mentioned, how often you guys are testing and looking at the body's responses to stress. And the data you're collecting, I just think that's going to be a fascinating read one of these days. When you guys open it up to us all, it's just going to be absolutely brilliant.
We plan on that. But I have to say that the big data collector in those team is our sports scientist. He's actually, I actually see he tried to call me right now from Sierra Nevada, but he's doing a lot of tests with Atlas. He's the mastermind of some of the things, and he's one of the thing that the driving force that always make us try to improve. I've been the coach for the athletes for now 10, 11 years, and improve as a coach, and you learn day by day, and you always try to be better. But after the Olympics in Rio, we put in the sports scientist called Olav Alexander on the team, and he's the one who's challenging me more. But we established new test routines, and he wants to find more data. So now the last 4 years, we have been collecting much more data than we did the first years. And that is something at one point we want to share. And he's working with a lot of researchers all over the world. And he is one of the reasons that we have been so successful. Even I'm the coach and make the program and everything, but he's the one who's doing the big data analysis. And he's like me. Always want to be better, always improve. And we call him the mad professor. And he's like everything we do. And if you use, let's say we go to the velodrome, we want to test some aerodynamic drag. And then he, of course, have the tools to do that.
Wow.
But then he found out that, okay, the tools that you use for that is not good enough. So then he go to the manufacturer of that, and then you start discussion with the brand, and then they improving even more. For instance, we have been using the power meters for running street sensor for many years, and he's in discussion with them almost on daily basis. Look here, we see the data here. You can still do it better. You can improve that. You should look at that algorithm. And working on with many of the big brands a lot of the time to make the product we use for that analysis even better.
Yeah, I love all of that because it takes a village, right? I mean, it takes a whole team of great minds. I particularly like someone like Ola, who's got that engineer, that scientific mindset. There's a problem, and I want to fix it. You know, like there's a variable there that's not running as smooth as I want. So how do I fix it? So to have a fixer on your team, somebody that's out there that just loves problem solving, that's just fascinating. That's just fantastic for the whole team. Good on you for outsourcing that as well, mate. Because I want to step into. We talked about Bermuda, but the other really, really cool one, and I know there's been quite a few, but I really like this one as well, was Ironman 70.3 World Championships in Nice in 2019 with Gustav Iden. Really almost a surprise. Even though we'd seen him, I think everybody thought Alistair Brownlee and all the, tremendous field, one of the best fields we've ever seen. And Gustav just owned that race, and Kristian came in fourth, I think, on the day.
Yeah, he was fourth.
But a great day all around again. Tell me about the preparation for that race and what that one was like for you.
That was also kind of a good preparation. But the thing that was different with that preparation is that the preparation we did was for the Olympic test event in Tokyo and the WTS Grand Final. So all the training we did was for that. So we were actually, most of the summer we were in Fondremeux and doing the base training there. And then we went over to Japan, and we had a place, we have a cooperation with the Japanese Federation. And they found a place for us 2 hours outside Tokyo, where we did a lot of the heat training to prepare for the Tokyo test event, and we did really good training there. And you probably heard it before, but that was the place where Gustav found his famous Taiwan's cap. But basically all the training we did was leading up to the Olympic distance races we did in Tokyo and of course in Grand Final in Lausanne. And a part of that story, who in many ways explains a little bit of the result in Nice, was that Kristian had a terrible crash in Tokyo. He was not able to finish the race, and he could barely not walk. He could not walk at all. So when we actually traveled back to Norway, he was sitting in a wheelchair. Wow. Yeah, and it was really frustrating for him and for us because he could not walk and move his legs. And when we was going back to Europe, it was 12 days before the Grand Final in Lausanne, and he could not run. And he was able to have his first running. After 7 or 8 days, he was able to move his leg a little bit, and he could bike, he could swim, and he could have his first run 6 days before the grand final in Lausanne. In the end, it turned out that the grand final was a very good race for him, because he was in his shape of his life.
Finally, he won. Finally, he won.
Finally, he won. And we were, of course, very happy for that. And we also knew that he was in even better shape in Tokyo. So that is a race he would have won. But that doesn't matter. He was not able to finish. But in many ways, the training he missed, he was a lot of energy and ready for the Lausanne race, but it was a little bit big. He was not fresh enough, but trained enough to be at his best life in the 70.3 World Championship, because he lost 1 week of training at a quite crucial time of the tapering process. So, but Gustav, he was there. He was 4 in the test event. He was 4 in Lausanne, and he's in a kind of an easy-going guy. And because we were discussing the race strategy, what we should do before the Nice race, and he was like, I just use my normal road bike. He had told that story many times, but he didn't want to stress with changing his bike and whatever. And he was like, I'm good in the hills and I'm good technical downhill, so it will be no problem. And the only thing we can do between these races was just try to learn the cycling course in this, because it's quite technical. So they were able to train on that a lot of times. And we were also working on a little bit of the nutrition plan to optimize that. So we knew that everything was perfect. And we did some calculation on the power output, what he could keep going the uphills to be able to run what he was able to do. At that time, when we were sitting down and discussing that, we were quite sure that both him and Kristian could be able to run 1:08 half marathon. And we were actually planning for them to do that. And it ended up that Gustav did it. Kristian was a little bit tired, so he was not able to do that. And I said that he missed a little bit too much of training leading up to that race, especially to perform at the highest level of the 70.3 race. But anyway, Gustav was fresh and fit. And I think one of the big success that when he was going uphill, he was very good to get into nutrition. He was very good to pace himself. He was biking on the intensity he needed to do. So Alistair, he was getting away from bag 2. But he knew that he was so good in the technical downhill, so we were able to catch them. And the best thing he did after that, when coming into transition, but he decided to have a quick transition, no socks, and just take everything with him and run. Because what happened then was that Alistair was 15-20 seconds behind, and Alistair is a very aggressive racer. So, of course, he will go after Gustav. There's no way it could turn out other ways. And we had a feeling, if that happening, that Alistair could outpace himself and start out a little bit too hard. On the other hand, we knew that Gustav knew he can run 1:08. So if he knew that, he started out in that pace. He's not planning to go 1:06, because we knew that if you do 1:08, it will be good. And he knew that with the pacing he did on the bike, with the nutrition we planned on, he could run 1:08. Of course, you need to have your day, and everything need to turn out as you planned. But if you make good planning, it's quite often that you have a chance to actually achieve what you plan to do.
The planning there is, I think, fascinating. There's so many parts to what you just said. Starting on the final part there of understanding the way a competitor is going to perform or race, and the importance of not putting on socks or having a quick transition, because they love to lead from the front and they're going to make themselves get to the front. So you're affecting their race. People always say, oh, you can only control yourself. But I've always been a big believer. I'm trying to make, not only am I wanting to have a good day, but I'm trying to make sure my competitors don't have their best day. And if I can do something that affects them to not have their best day, then it just goes in my favor. And that's what you guys did with Alistair Brownlee there. I think it's just incredible. Then I think, maybe using the road bike, so he was able to afford himself to climb the hill and fuel at the same time while climbing. It's not easy if your heart rate's through the roof to be fueling, because he had the confidence in his descending, probably because he was on a road bike a little bit more than a time trial bike, I'd imagine. Obviously, he's a good descender anyway. So I like all of that planning. I'm fascinated when you said Kristian Blummenfelt had 1 week off training, and so he was going to maybe miss. Have you guys found through your testing that 1 week of training would affect a performance that dramatically?
No, we didn't know for sure. So we, of course, hope that he would be ready. And in many ways, he was fit. So it was, he was not totally out of training. It was mostly he was not able to run. I think for Kristian, the biggest challenge the week leading up to Nice, that he got a new bike. Of course, he got a time trial bike, and he got very little time to do good bike fit. So his position was not optimal. So he didn't find himself too comfortable on the bike at that time. And that also, especially when you're going downhill, it's quite tough when you are not familiar with the bike. So I think that was the biggest challenge. So he burned a little bit too matches, and then he lost a little bit of the training, that he didn't have the edge to do 108, the half marathon that we planned to do, because of the missing training. But it's really, really small margins. And in another race later that year, of course, he set the world record on the 70.3. So but it's funny that both Kristian and Gustav, they were training together every day, every session toward the race, and they were talking about the tactics, going up the hills, they're learning about the curves and how to attack the downhills and everything. So they were in it together, and they did a really good job of supporting and helping each other, to both of them to be at their best.
Well, I think it was an incredible back-to-back weeks for you guys, with Kristian winning the grand final, and then the next week, Gustav Iden winning the 70.3 World Championships. I mean, these peaking for these big events. Let's talk tapering, because I think that's getting that right, especially when you're combining extra stresses like altitude training and the heat adaptation. When are you coming down from altitude? How far out would you do that? I mean, if these are secrets, I understand, but I'm gonna stab, and if you give away some, that'd be great. But just having an understanding of tapering is critical for all of us when we want to have a peak performance.
Yes, I think it's no trouble discussing and talk about that. But what we see that is a little bit individual, coming down from altitude to sea level, and it's also a little bit based on what races you do. So as I say, that many times we have doing some quite big races, we are at altitude and just going down, and the race 2 days after, and in general I would say that 2-3 days after altitude block you should be quite ready to race. But from maybe around day 5 to day 8, 9, it's very often you feel that the athlete is not responding so well. Like, it could be good, it could be bad. But from then 10 to 12, 14, they are normally in a window, they are performing very well. And that is quite normal. But we also see that you get a kind of a second wave up to 4 weeks after altitude. So it's many strategies we can use. And what strategy we use is a little bit based on where we are, what races we are going to do, and so on. For instance, talking about Bermuda early on, that's a typical race that we come down to sea level 11 days before the race. Then we are quite sure. Mm-hmm. For the test event in Tokyo, it was, I think, 12, 14 days, quite basic. But then you still have the grand final 2 weeks after that again. So there you're in another window. So there's no way you could go up to altitude and have a little micro block. So you then you need to make the tapering work for all 3 races. So within, it was 2.5 weeks, they actually did 3 races. And if you look at the history, I think it's not often you have seen athletes performing at that high level in so period of the time. You saw that Gustav, he was 4th in the test event, he was 4th in the grand final, and he won the Nice race. And that was within 3 weeks.
It's incredible. And what about with the heat? I mean, we talked about altitude. Are you finding the same kind of stimuli with the heat? Or like, when do you need to get out of that kind of heat adaptation type training?
Yeah, that we have done a little bit different thing. But of course, heat training or heat adaptation training is something you can use for many things. One thing is, of course, to acclimatize, to be ready for a race in the heat. But you can also use it because training in the heat, that can also change the blood plasma, who is giving some of the same kind of benefit as training in altitude. But you can do that in shorter blocks of time. So you don't need to spend 3 weeks in a heat chamber. You just need to have several sessions within a period of time, and you will be quite well adapted to the heat. But of course, when you're coming into the details there, then we are more some of the secrets that we have found out, how the athletes adapt to the heat and how many days they need, what kind of training you could do in the heat, and all of that kind. And then we also, at that time, we used a lot of technology. We are looking at the core temperature, how the core temperature is rising, and we see that compared to the intensity, the way in the training. For instance, we can see how much the power output on the bike can affect the core temperature and how that will rise or stabilize. And that is very interesting field of data and research that some big nations are putting some efforts in, especially when you are leading up to the Olympics now. And that's a really interesting field. And that is something you also can learn from and benefit in when you are racing other places than in the heat, because that is something you can use in your everyday training, actually. And you don't need a heat chamber. You can just dress yourself up and put the turbo trainer in the bath and turn up the heat.
Yeah. You know what I'm loving about this conversation is just how passionate you are about learning and planning and trying to figure out how to do things better. I want to skip over my notes here and get to something that I really want to talk to you about, and that's preparing for the 2020 Olympics, 2021 Olympics in Tokyo. And I guess let's start with a very broad question on what do you think it's going to take to win the gold medal there?
Wow. First, you need to be well acclimatized so you can race in the heat. You saw at the test event that some of the big, really good athletes have really trouble in the heat. But then on the other hand, that is the race this year that every athlete want to be at the best. So I think it's quite a broad question. I know what we need to do, and I know how we should prepare, but I also know that the competition will be really tough. We know that suddenly Mr. Alistair Brownlee, he found out that he maybe want to race, and you have the youngster Alex Yee, who is a tremendous fast runner, and you have some of the the young New Zealand guy who's you have a lot of athletes. The French team is incredibly strong. Yeah.
Where do you start, right? Where do you start? Yeah. I mean, there's really 20, 25 guys that are potentially on the podium at least for this Olympics. And I just interviewed Jacob Birtwistle from Australia, and the amount of guys that have this eye on this gold medal, it's just, I can't wait. Personally, I'm so excited. How do you feel about it when the ITU kind of look at an event and then maybe want to shorten it due to sort of temperature and things like that? What's your attitude towards that?
It's a little bit mixed. I think if you do the preparation, I think it's no problem to race on the normal distance that you normally have. And I didn't like in the test event, they shortened the distance for the girls. I don't think it was necessary. If you did the preparation and are acclimatized, it should be no problem. But on the other hand, they look at the data and the health risk, and then you it's a little bit wider perspective because they do it for the health of the athletes. And of course, you have athletes in the field. You don't want the athletes you are coaching and know to be destroyed because it's too hot there.
It's an interesting conversation. I definitely think you got to worry about their health. I agree with you and what the ITU are doing. But I put this on social media. Actually, I was a bit disappointed in the fact that you're talking about some of the greatest physical endurance performers in the world. These are, when we're talking about the men and women that are going to be racing Tokyo for triathlon, we are talking about 100, 110 of the greatest physical specimens on the planet that have the greatest teams of support around them, that know how to prepare for all conditions better than anybody in the world. That I think we are disrespecting the athletes themselves by not giving them the opportunity to show the world what they can do under any circumstance. And I, for one, was a little bit disappointed on that. But anyway, that's getting political, and I should probably probably stop there.
We should. But I just want to add, we have done so much research on our athlete, and we know that some of the data that the ITU or World Triathlon are looking at are too old.
Yes,
there are newer data who show that you can rise the temperature. You can raise at higher temperature than the limit is. You just need to do some preparation before. And you have to say, it is the best trained athletes in the world. They can handle it. And
and if you can't slow down. You know what I mean? If you slow down, pace yourself. I mean, how fast do you think that 10K will be, being the conditions, July in Tokyo?
It will not be like the London Olympic race where that was just going 29 minutes, but I think they can race under 30 minutes, and we are quite sure about that. We saw that at the test event, Casper, who was second here, ran 30:45 or something. And based on training, we saw that especially Kristian could go quite much faster than that. And sub 30, I'm quite sure. But it's a little bit up to the pacing strategy and how the race will turn out, because it could be a cat and mouse kind of race where the big boys are just in front. I don't think so. But
not with Team Norway there, mate. With Team Norway, Alistair Brownlee, this race will not have a moment of cat and mouse.
No, in theory, it never happened with Norwegian. So
no, not with the guys that you're training, mate. The one thing we always know when Gustav and Casper are there is it's a race from the gun. And
it will be.
The gun. And I think there's a number of other guys that will join them, but they're not going to play. I'm curious also on your thoughts on the mixed relay. We need Norway. I mean, you guys aren't quite there. You how are you going with that fourth, the second woman to have a team? Because we need to see Team Norway on that start list.
Yeah, we want to be on the start list, and we have planned to try to see what we can do. And you saw in the World Championship in Hamburg, we were able to get a wild card, and we ended up placing 4. So I think we should have a chance there. But the challenge is we have 2 girls fighting for the last spot. Both of them are improving a lot, but they are probably getting a little bit out of time because they need to improve their Olympic qualification. It's not that we just can qualify the team. They also need to be within top 140 spot in the Olympic qualification individually.
Right.
And that is the challenge. So we are, of course, planning the races we want to do in the Olympic qualification period, but it doesn't make it any easier when some of the races are getting cancelled, because now we're getting less and less races that we can get the points at. So, but we will fight to the end, and we have and we have 2 girls, and they've been away 3 months now in training camp. We have 3 girls with Lotte, but we have 2 girls fighting for the last position, and we are working really hard on them every day. The women's team, it's a part of a process. It could be that we will not qualify the team. I will not say that we will not do it, because I strongly believe that we will qualify. But we have a process now. Now we are including more women in the team. We are working hard with them to develop them the same way as we developed the boys earlier. Right. And I actually said to them in Portugal on training camp, we said to them, girls, I will not rest unless you take a podium sweep in the WTS races within the next year. So I will not retire from coaching before you have achieved that. So just keep on working, I said to them.
I think that's fantastic, and I hope, I guess, if you don't get the qualifying races, or if they keep getting cancelled, I mean, is there a wild card effect for the Olympics then for the team? Is that a possibility, or is there no such thing?
It's no such thing, as I have understand it. No, so we have it's 2 things. We need to have the team top 3 in the qualification race. That is likely that we can do. And then we need to have at least one of the girls top 140 in the Olympic qualification list.
Well, mate, so the rest of 2021 leading up to the Olympics, is it Sierra Nevada? Is it Mont Remo? Where are the rest of the camps leading in? What's the rest of the year look like up until at least the games, or even beyond that?
Yeah, we are now in Sierra Nevada, and we will be in Sierra Nevada to the end of April. And then we have a little bit preparation at the sea level, and hopefully we will go to Japan and the first race in Yokohama. Mm-hmm. And then we have full races every weekend, not for everyone, but it will be quite a hectical racing season for all athletes who want to qualify for the Olympics. You have some athletes who are almost there, who want to do everything they can to get the last races in. So some will of course do a lot of racing. For the best athletes, we will do the racing they feel they need to do. And after the WTS race in Leeds, we are going up to altitude in Fondremø again, and then we'll stay there until we are going to the pre-camp outside Tokyo. Mm-hmm. Then we have the Olympics, and and after that, it's normally a time to slow down, relax a little bit, but many of the races are postponed, so it will be a hectical August, and it's probably no secret that some of the boys want to go all in to see if they can qualify for Hawaii, or Gustav should be qualified to prepare for the Ironman Hawaii. So, of course, we need to work on that one. And on top of that, we have Mr. Blummenfelt, who planned that he wants to do the Sub-7 project. So then he will work on that. And when he's finished with that, he needs to start preparation for the next Olympic cycle. So
There's no rest, mate. There's
no time for resting.
I have one question that's kind of out of the blue here. Have you been approached by other federations to come and coach?
I have some requests, yes.
Yes, I'm sure.
I have, but it is... First, I will not say that I am not sure that I can replicate the same in other countries. I think I can, but I have a long history with athletes. It's not about coaching them, and it's about the team. You know them. You are more with them than you are with your kids almost, and they are something. I cannot see me coach. Maybe I can coach one or few other athletes as I do, but I don't think I can coach another team when the athletes I have now is still racing. As long as they want me as I coach, and as long as I have the motivation, and as long as I'm improving and getting better and better, I want to work with the same team rest of the world.
You're a good man. You're a very good man, and I love that answer. I have two final questions, and I'll let you go because I've taken so much of your time. But this show could keep going and going because I love what you're doing.
It's really good conversation we have, so I really enjoy it.
Yeah. So, okay, let's leave with a tip. What's sort of one tip that you can have for people listening to this episode on just how to sort of optimize their life and their performances if they're triathletes?
There's many answers on that. If I were talking to a normal bunch of people, I said, get out every day and do some exercise because you need it and you get a lot of good health from it, mental strength of it. But most triathletes probably don't have the trouble with doing enough training. But it's something I've started thinking more about for myself is try to appreciate what you have and be happy with what you have and appreciate time with your family, your kids, and the small thing in the world that could be that I'm sometimes thinking I'm very driven by the performance of the athletes, but in the end, yes, I like them to win the Olympics, to win gold, but in the end, it is your family, your kids, and the small thing in the world that you have every day that's important. And for me, I would try to put my more energy into that because if you don't have it good as a person, you will not be in good in any role. You will not be a good coach, not a good dad, anything.
Mate, I couldn't have put that any better myself. I think that's just a really great way to put it. And finally, if you could sit with anybody in the world and have a coffee with them, any living person, who would it be and why?
Wow, that is a little bit tricky question. It could be. I thought a little bit about it. I don't know. I don't want to go into any politics discussion, but for me, the former president of the US, Barack Obama, was he is a fascinating person. You see that he is genuine in what he do. He have a lot of energy. He is very like I see him, he's a team worker. He's setting himself in front. And the mutual respect he had for other people, even if they in the political side are very disagree with each other. That the way he is as a person, it would be really interesting to sit down with him and discuss leadership, how you're working with other people, how the genuine respect for all people, even you are on the opposite side in politics or anything. For me, he's a very fascinating person. I really would like to know better. But of course, in the big world, it's a lot of people that you want to sit down and get to better know. And
these days with COVID, I think we're all excited about getting to sit down.
And it would be really great to meet you face to face once time, and all 100%. Of the
Oh, mate, I can't wait to open up this show and start hitting the road and getting to
that you should do when you can out traveling. You should go out to a different environment and performance places and meet people and meet them and have a workout.
Have a workout and then a beer and then just share some stories. That's my ultimate plan with this show. But Arild, mate, thank you so much for your time and all your knowledge and what you've done over this last not just this last 10 years, but your whole journey's just been fascinating to listen to. So I really, really appreciate it. Where can, if people are interested in learning more about you or listening to your story, where can they follow you?
I have an Instagram account and also have Twitter and Facebook. I'm not so active on all social media, but on Instagram, Arild T, my name. I can give you the link afterwards. You can follow me.
Perfect.
Yeah, and then mostly about the training and what we do. It's not so much about me as a person because I don't think I'm so interested. But anyway, yeah.
I think firstly, I think you're fascinating. Secondly, I'll put all of that in the show notes, mate, so people can find you there. And if you're not following Arild, you can also be following his athletes, Kristian Blummenfelt, Gustav Iden, and Casper Stornes. They all have fascinating stories, and they often post with you in it. So you are all over the Instagram, whether you like it or not. But anyway, mate, I think this is a great place to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for listening, sharing, and you can find all the show notes and timestamps, coupon codes, links, and everything at bennettendurance.com/media. Thanks again, Arild. This was amazing, mate.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Cheers, buddy.
Thanks a lot for listening to Be With Champions. If you've enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Be With Champions Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.